Okay. All right. So as we go through these tools here, I'm going to continue with the pen tool. This is just like the pen tool that we have in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to jump to this image here. The pen tool is good for like more solid edge shapes. So like this UFO would be the perfect candidate, and you can probably barely see it, but you see that little kind of just really anchor point there. You can see kind of like the curve that goes between the initial point I created. It's really hard to see, but I'll keep drawing and you'll be able to see it. So you can just use this as any other pen tool that you would in Illustrator. So at the end of this point here, I can actually hold the Alt key, click the point, and then you can see how that little kind of swivel bar goes away, and I can click that end again and create sort of like tweak the angle a little bit that I'm going to draw my next line. So I can extend that out here, click on this edge. Well, that's a little bit off. So I can alt click this edge. Alt click this anchor point again and kind of refine my edge. And so this is all to an end of basically creating a selection. So I can trace this out just like so, and I'm going a little bit closer to this light, but I'm not going to go through this light because I want that light for my image. So I'm just going to kind of rough around it right now. And so right now my pen tool is not really a selection, it's actually just a path. They call them paths here in Photoshop. And I'm just tracing what I am going to define as a selection here later on. So I kind of came to a stopping point here. Again, I'm going to hold the Alt key. I'm going to click on this end point. I'm going to click and hold and then kind of drag this out a little bit so I can kind of refine my my path a little bit more. Otherwise, if I was to Alt click and drag this, I could really, affect the curvature of my line, see? So I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to Alt click and then kind of tighten it up a little bit so I can get a sharper curve. And finish it up there. It's probably not perfect. But it's one of those good enough things. At this point, to make my path into a selection, I would hit this paths palette here, and then I'd hit this menu, and you can see that they're calling it work path. So they call every path that you start in Photoshop a work path. I can hit this menu, and then just hit make selection. So it's one of these hamburger menus. I guess it's a double quarter pounder because it's got two. So you could hit that and then hit make selection. Now you can define a feather radius. So the feather radius is really and it's defined by pixels. So it's really the amount of pixels that you want to feather the edge from, right? So if I want a solid selection, I'm going to do no pixels. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to show you what it looks like without it. So I have this selected, and now I'm going to go to image. I'm going to go to select and then inverse. So I have this selected, but I want to get rid of everything else, so I'm just going to inverse what I have selected. Command-Shift-I is the way to do that with the keyboard shortcut. You can also get to it from the menu here. So now you can see that my marching ants are around the entire border and around this piece, this UFO. And now I can just hit my move tool here and just hit delete on this. Oops, sorry. And then just hit, no, I don't want to fill. Layer. Okay, I have to unlock my background. This is always something that I usually forget to do when I'm working in a file. So now I have unlocked this background and now I can delete it. So going back then, circling back, I did the pen tool around here, created a path, made the path into a selection, and then I inversed the selection. I gave it a definition of 0 pixels feather. That means, I'm just going to Command D to deselect this. That means that the edge is pretty stinking sharp, right? As sharp as can possibly be with the quality of this photo. So let me just undo that and show you what it looks like when I give it more of a feather. So I'm going to go back in my history palette here, all the way back to when I closed the pen path here, and they call it closed path behind my head. So can everyone see that? Okay. Okay. So again, went back. Let's unlock this so it doesn't give me any problems again. And again, we'll just go to this paths panel. You can get to it here, or I can just click here and get to it. Again, I'll go into my double quarter pounder menu, and I'll hit make selection. Now, I'm going to give it like a real a feathered edge, so it's going to be very, very blurry on the edges of 5. So 5 pixels. Let me see if that's even good enough. Yeah, that's pretty good. So now you can see it's, the edge is feathered. So whatever I select with the pen tool, it kind of added a 5 pixel feathered edge to it. Again, that's something that you'll probably need eventually. But the more you work with the pen tool, the more you will be experimenting with these things and finding your own workflow for them. So I'm going back to make my selection at 0 pixels again. That's kind of where we wanted to eventually. I just wanted to demo to you what the difference between that feathering option was. I'm going to hit Command D to deselect after I deleted that background. And then I'm very simply just going to take this piece and drag it over to another photo. So I have my cows photo open here, and then my UFO is, I'm going to bring them over up into this tab here. I still have my mouse, my clicker down, and then I'm just dragging it over to that photo up there, or that tab up there for cows, and then I just really plopped this guy into the sky here. So this is what I mean when we're kind of getting into more of the image creation aspect of it. Okay, so that's there. This looks terrible, but that's where we're going to kind of go through and fix it, right? So next step I got to do is I want to duplicate some of these. So I have my UFO. I'm going to call him the big UFO, and then I'm going to actually duplicate him. So you saw earlier that I could duplicate something on the screen within a single layer. I could copy it, cut it, create a new layer down here, paste it onto that layer, which I'll just do real quick now. So how do I do that for this? I'm going to select all. I'm selecting this whole entire canvas on this individual layer. Now I have everything selected, but I want to isolate. I want to just select that UFO. I know that's the only thing or object that's pixelated on the layer. So I can just hit my move tool. And then what I'm going to do is actually just use my arrow keys to nudge the screen. So I just nudge it up and down, and it automatically reads where the pixels are. It snaps right to them. I don't even have to reselect that thing anymore. It's pretty much on its own layer, so I'm good to go. And I can copy it, copy, go to layer 1, paste, paste, paste. So now I have my other one. Here's another way you can duplicate those is through the, I'll call it small 1, is in the layer here. I can hold Alt, and I can click and actually drag this. So you can see now I have like another layer that I'm just going to put on top of this first one. Or I'll just put it behind in between. So now I have another layer. And now this is in the exact position that the layer above it is. So it looks like there's not an extra one, but it's hiding back there. It's pixel perfect to the layer behind it, so we couldn't see we had to move it. The only reason we know it's there is because of these layers here. All right, so I have all these duplicated. What I want to do is refine this this kind of little light or whatever from underneath it, so it looks like it's supposed to be there, not a cut and paste job. So let me get rid of these. Let me go back to this guy. And let me separate this light piece from the UFO. So what I'm going to do is take the pen tool and cut across it, because this is the part that I want to really blend very well. So again, just like before, I've completed my path. I'm going to go to my paths panel, hit make selection, feather it at 0, which is fine. I'm going to go back to my layers, and I'm going to create a new layer. Call it something or call it nothing. And now I'm going to go back to this big UFO. I'm going to copy, Command C, Command X, and then I'm just going to paste it. Move that into place. Something like that. So it still looks pretty rough, but we have it on 2 separate layers, which is good. Now, what I want to do is really feather this edge of this light. So you very simply can just use your eraser tool if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be perfect because light really isn't perfect. I want to go up here and make sure that the hardness of my brush is really none. So it's not going to have any hard edges whatsoever. It's all just going to be just very soft deleting. And I'm going to start with 50% opacity. I'm just going to like increase the size and just start punching, just kind of start punching the edge of it with my clicker. Until I feel like it looks decent. See, I'm just very, very lightly taking away. I want to keep some of that bottom piece. And see, I'm not worried about clicking over the UFO because this is on a totally separate layer. I had a plan, and my plan was separate this light part because that's the piece that I'm concerned with, and it's going to make my job a lot easier because I don't have to deal with that that stuff anymore, or that UFO right now. So now that looks decent, better than I thought it would look. So what I'm going to do, I could stop there, but I kind of wanted to show you some of these layering options. So in my layers palette, there's a drop down here, and it starts with normal. So this is what the layer looks like normal. I can go and do this dissolve selection. So you see, this is really this layer is based on what this layer style is defining. It is interacting with the layer underneath it in a different way. So when I hit dissolve, it dissolves the layer beneath it into itself. Let's try a different one. These I don't know exactly what all of these do, a lot of time it's just experimentation. So I'll hit like overlay and I'll say, no, that doesn't work. It looks crazy. Pin light. Oh, that kind of gives it a nice glow. Let's see what the difference between normal and pin light is. Okay, normal has a little bit of a softer, more saturated white. Pin light gives it like a little more of that glow. I like how it reflects. It looks a lot like this glow here. So it's just a little bit of a refinement there. You can go to saturation. That doesn't work. These are all color color options. Some of them do the exact same thing as the others. This is interesting. But so this is just really like a layer, just a layer style or layer filter that you can kind of play with. So I'll just choose pin light and leave it at that. So now that I'm happy with that, if I were to say group these two layers together, light and big UFO, right now they're separate, so if I accidentally click somewhere on the screen and drag something, it's going to detach, of course. But if I was to compress these two layers, that would cause an issue. And that issue would be that I have one layer that has normal style to it, and I have another layer that has a pin light style to it. If I compress them together, I'm going to lose my layer style to the light layer, and I want to keep it that way because I think it improves the image a little bit. It makes it look a little more realistic. I mean, as realistic as a UFO in the sky could look. So I want to keep those layer styles. So instead of compressing both of those together, I can actually, from a pixel-based standpoint, I can keep them both chunked out in these layers, but then group them in a folder. So what I'm going to do is hit this little folder button down here with both layers selected. So I have both of these selected right now, and I just shift-click, get them both together, hit this folder icon, and now I have a group, right? So I'll call this group then of layers large UFOs. Okay. Now I can treat this group. Now I don't have to really worry about both of them being separate. They're together in my layers palette, and I can work with them as if they're one piece. So I can even again, like before, how I duplicated the layer. I can just Alt-click large UFO, drag, and then just kind of plop it wherever it allows me to do it. If you just put it down there, you can move it around too. So Alt-click, drag, and I'll move it up. And then I'll move it over. Now, so for this piece, I'm going to call this small UFO. And now I'm going to use my transform tool, Command T. Now remember the transform tool, we don't want to transform up, we want to transform down. When you transform up, you got to use the image palette, because that's just the basis of raster graphics rather than vector art. Vector art you can scale up as much as you want without losing any quality. And so this piece, I'm just going to pop it in the background here, rotate it a little bit, try and make it look as natural as possible. Okay, then I'm just going to hit Enter to apply that transformation and that rotation. I'm going to click this UFO up here, this UFO layer, so then I can click and drag. You can actually you can choose your move tool to auto select. So what auto select does is it actually just selects whatever you physically have selected on the canvas. You could just grab it as you would in Illustrator or something like that. It's very intuitive. But I unclick it because sometimes I have a lot of layers going on, and like I want to make sure that I'm not moving anything by accident or something like that. So like I turn auto select off, and I'm trying, I'm clicking over here on the cow and moving, but my UFO is moving. So now I know, oh, if I was trying to move the cow, it's not selected in the layers palette, so it just helps keep me in check a little bit. But some people like it the other way too. I'm gonna Alt-click and drag this small UFO layer again, and I'm just gonna give another, UFO here. Kind of make them smaller so they're in like the distance. What I'm gonna do now is actually, get darker in here or something. Is it just the sun going? It looks like, it feels like it's got darker in here. Okay, anyways. So this then UFO piece here, what I want to do is, I don't want them to be as sharp in the background. It's all about, fooling the eye, right? I don't want them to be as sharp. I want them to be blurred, because naturally, if you're seeing something in the distance, it doesn't look as sharp as when you're seeing it close up. So for this piece, this small UFO copy, and if I don't know what it is, I'm just going to kind of click this eye symbol here in my layers palette, and I can see what's coming on and off, and I know where I'm at. I know that I'm selecting the right thing. I tend to do that a lot. So what I can do then is click on the layer that I want to actually merge now, the folder I want to merge. So of course in this folder I have 2 layers. I want to merge them because I want to apply a filter to both of those, and I want to blur them. So I'm going to hit Control, click, Control as opposed to Command. So Control, click, merge group, and now that's turning that into a layer for me, a single layer, which is great because now I can go to Select, Filter, Blur, and then I can apply a Gaussian blur filter to it. So that looks really blurry, and now I can see I have my preview box checked. I can check and uncheck preview here. It's my Gaussian blur workbox. I can uncheck and check it to see what the effect is. I usually keep it checked, and I just work on it until it's the way I feel is best. So what I'm doing is applying a blur to this UFO because it's in the background and I want it to look a little bit more natural, and I'm bringing it down a little bit. I don't want it too blurry like that because you can't even see that. That would be way too far in the background. So maybe something like that. Maybe a little less. Yeah. And since that's farther in the background because it's smaller, I'll make it a little bit blurrier. Now, again, it looks really strange because this one is right next to it and it's completely solid, or completely sharp, so I'm going to do the same thing to that, except I'm not going to blur it as much because it's a little bit closer to the foreground. So a little bit of like science involved here. Like, according to science, this would look less blurry in the foreground than it would in the background, so you can kind of apply that in Photoshop, those same principles, and you just have faith that it'll work, So I have that selected again after it's been compressed into one layer, and then I can go to, again, Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'll make it a little bit less blurry. So in this Gaussian Blur menu, the less pixels you give to the radius option here, the less blurry. The more pixels, the more blurry. So it's just saying how many pixels pixel widths or something do you want blurred. And again, you can just play with it to whatever feels right. This UFO, I'm going to go back to the large one and tweak it a little bit. Here, maybe it goes off of the page. Something like that. So that's just showing you a little bit of layers, showing you a little bit of tweaking the same object really, but in a way making it look different in the composition. A tad. Showing you the pen tool. Showing layer blending modes, which are these here in the tool palette. There's much more to be, that you can do within the layers palette too. We could look at that as well. I mean, I can reduce the opacity of an entire layer just like that, with this opacity slider, and now I'm affecting this large UFO image. Any questions so far? Okay. Oh, yes, sir. Yes. Yep. Sure. Absolutely. So I'll go back here. So let me go back here. So essentially what I did was at this point I had created this path with the pen tool, right? So I started up here, ended up coming all the way around, came all the way around, and then ended here. It closed. Actually, just a pen. So it's a little bit different than the selection tool. The pen tool, you're just going to be able to draw a path. But see, I don't have my marching ants up there yet, so it's not really a selection. It's just like a shape that's ready to become a selection. Because you can do other things with this pen tool as well. So selecting things is just one of like the little tricks you can use with the path. But once I complete my path with my pen tool, what I do is go up into this paths palette. And in this paths palette, you can see that there is what's called a work path, and that's exactly what the shape that I created with my pen. So I'll make sure that's clicked on, and then I go to this hamburger menu here, and I click on it, and then I get that make selection option. You could stroke the path.
One more time.
Yes. Yes. The path palette. See this little like hamburger menu here?
Yes.
You just click on that. So that's like a sub menu. It's like a more options menu, if you will, for each palette. Each palette has that, and each palette has different options within that menu depending on the palette that you're in. So these are just the options that the paths palette has within it through this menu. So even in layers, I have that menu, and now I can have all of these options. So I can even just flatten the image from that menu right there, which means basically compress all of the layers into one, which you don't necessarily want to do all of the time. But again, so in the paths palette, I have this work paths selected. It's automatically going to be created once I finish a path with a pen tool. Once I make a path with a pen tool, it's going to be saved there. So, for instance, okay, maybe not. That added to the path, so okay, that added it. That's fine. So yeah, I added this piece up here. That's like, I just kind of roughed this little pen tool shape in. This is also selected. It's all part of the work path layer. So, so in order to make that a selection then, I'll hit this menu and hit make selection. And then this menu that pops up, this is where I adjust the feather. So I can increase this to, I can even do an extreme case where it's like 10 pixels. Hit OK. It doesn't look like it's got 10 pixels selected, or a 10 pixel feather, if you will. But now that I have it selected and I hit Command-Shift-I, which is going to inverse the selection. So, and you can't even see it on the screen. It's really bad. Initially I had these selected. This was clear. Now I inverse my selection. So I don't have this selected. I have this negative space selected outside of it now. And so what I'm going to do is hit this little move tool up here to make sure that I'm good and ready to delete stuff. And I'll hit delete. And then now you can see that the edge of it And I'll press Command D to deselect. So now you can see like the edge of it, it kind of cut in. Like, so my 10 pixel feather is applied along this whole entire path. So if you wanted to like, I don't know, trace something that would need a feather, like cotton candy or something, I guess, that might help. And then you can go back and forth into your history palette and say, oh, it's a little too feathered, needs a little less feathering. So you can go back into your history palette and just, without having to retrace the whole shape with your pen tool, just adjust the feather. Yes, yeah. So yeah, no problem. So yeah, that's that. Are there any other questions right now? Where am I at? Yeah. Where's my phone? Okay. Okay, so yeah, yeah, we already went through that. The only other thing I have on my list to show is sharpening of a photo. So this cow image, yeah, I guess it's pretty bad. I mean, the edges are all really bad. Yeah, I might have to find something else that needs to be sharpened. Here we go. Actually, I was gonna this is not a good picture either for that. This one will do it. It's got enough detail. So he's pretty sharp, but you could sharpen an image. A lot of times, sometimes you'll get like an image that's really pixelated, really bad. Photoshop is the best tool to fix a bad image in that regard and in that detail. So if you were wanting to sharpen an image, you could essentially go to Filter, Sharpen, and then hit this Smart Sharpen option. One thing too, when you're working in these menus and stuff, is if you see like these 3 ellipses or 3 dots here at the end of an option in a menu, you know that there's going to be more like sub options within that. If it doesn't have anything, it's just going to like apply a filter, and but these 3 ellipses options are going to let you sort of refine stuff a little bit more and have more control. So the sharpen filter, I have to really do an extreme case here to kind of show it better. But in this, my RAM might not be too great. So in this, yeah, there it is. So in this menu, I can see that I have preview clicked on. I can click this on and off and see the changes that's happening inside of the image. The image when it was open, let me see how it looks up there. Yeah, the image when it was in its original form actually looks kind of blurry compared to when it's sharpened like this. This is an extreme sharpen job though. Like it looks pretty rough, but you can tell like what it's doing. So it's actually it's targeting the brights, making them a little bit brighter, and taking the dark edges and kind of increasing the contrast a little bit to kind of kind of really sharpen the photo or bring it into an artificial focus. So this is the palette to do those things. All of these different options like amount, radius will increase the level of contrast between the brights and the darks, edges. Amount will do the same type of thing. Amount will apply more of the filter to more areas. Reduce noise is good to use to eliminate what they call artifacting around edges. Typically if I get like a photo from like a cell phone or something, this will be like one of the first things that you would do is just go in there, sharpen it a little bit. It doesn't have to be extreme, but just do it as a step and then have it done so it looks at least a little bit better to the client after they send you something. It just helps sell it better. All right, so I'll save this demo for later. Are there any questions about the sharpen option? You can actually spot sharpen things as well. In your menu here, right where the blur tool is, there's a smudge tool and there's a sharpen tool. This sharpen tool will basically do the same thing as what I just showed you in the filter menu when you went under there. But in this instance, you can actually click and like physically sharpen things. See what that's doing? I mean, it's making it look terrible, but that's what, with a strength of 50% on the sharpen piece, sometimes you just need to quick sharpen something like this, Like if I wanted to bring out these little grooves here, I can just quick brush it, and it's little by little building it up, right? So if I go back, I can see the difference. It's kind of what was happening. So it's possible to do that too. Sometimes you might want to do that around eyeballs, eyelashes, just kind of brush in the eyelashes to sharpen them up, stuff like that. Okay, so that was a lot of demos today. Are there any questions? We still really have not gone through all of the tools in Photoshop, and even some of the really the color correction tools we haven't even really touched, and those are pretty in depth. All right, so to finish off today, I want to first wish you a happy Labor Day coming up, which is Monday. There's no classes, so that's good. So it's really weird coming in like for 2 days but that's fine with me. I'm not complaining. If you have not sent me your logos, please send. You can send it through Gmail. Yeah, you can send it through Gmail. You can upload it to the Moodle. Just send me what you got, and we can work through it too if there's any issues as well. What I'd like to actually do is I think an AI file would be good. Yeah. Does everyone have a shoe brand that they've chosen at this point? Oh, you did? Has any? I'm sorry? Oh, you submitted on Moodle? Okay. Um, for Wednesday, September 7th, what I want you guys to do and have ready, you know what, I'm going to, I'll push, yeah. So for Thursday, by end of class, what I want to do is work on collecting shoe images from your brand's websites. Sorry?
Do they have to be ones that are on the website right now, or can they be shoes that they've sold in the past?
They could be shoes that are sold in the past. So essentially, I have this on the Moodle, and what I want you guys to have are 3 categories of shoe images. So the assignment's up there on the Moodle, but essentially, can everyone see that up there? So there's 3 categories. Category 1, let's say categories 1, 2, 3. And I want you guys to name like the category, right? So let's say it's kids. So your brand has, let's say it's women's, men's, and kids. Let's say it's high heels, flats, sandals. Let's say it's clogs, I don't know, flip-flops, and whatever. So that's what I would need from you, is like 17 from the men's or whatever category. 17 shoe images at 900 pixels, either width or height. Probably it's going to be width. Whatever other category you want. So if you want your, if your brand, is like slippers or whatever, I don't know, maybe it's like those soft shoes that you wear around the house. Give me your category. So I'm just going to write like category. It's just whatever category it is. Category 2, and then the last one is 5 shoes. Category 3. And that's it. So you can have those, if you can have those ready for not by end of day Thursday or beginning of that following class the Monday, probably, let's say beginning of the following class Monday. Let's see, what date is that?
So not this Monday, but the next.
Not this Monday, but next. So let's see what date that is. That would be much faster on my phone. Unlock that thing. Yes, the 12th. Thank you. Thank you, Alicia. So the 12th, then. So then we can fit a little bit more demo time on that Wednesday. Let's see. So all of the specs for that are on the Moodle. They'll be on the Moodle. Email me if you need any help. I also have a demo here showing how you can actually capture the shoes online. You can send them. The files will be kind of large. Has anyone not used WeTransfer before? WeTransfer.com. WeTransfer.com